I've been dying to get out here today. What an amazing forum this has been. And so I'm just so honored to be here. And so here's my disclaimer for the day. Matt and Jeff asked me to come several months ago, and they said, would you like to come be a storyteller? And because I've created this successful mental health program that Matt just told you about, I go around to a lot of places. I talk about my mental health programming, and I said, of course, I'll do it. And then it dawned on me a few weeks ago that I had no idea what Matt wanted me to talk about here. So I contacted him and I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he says, your story. And I said, what do you mean my story? And he's like, how'd you get here? What are your hopes? What do you hope to do? And that sort of was a whole different wrench in what I expected to do. And frankly, quite a lot more work than talk. I could talk for hours about the mental health program that I do, but that was a lot more work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the mental health programming I do at American Express. Then I'm going to talk about my story and hopefully tie it all together at the end of this. So mental health programming at American Express. What we know at American Express is pretty much what Matt said. Healthy employees are more productive, right? They stay longer. There is a great benefit in managing the mental health of employees. In addition to that, it's the right thing to do, right? And so that's why I'm there. That's why I build mental health programs. Our overarching global mental health strategy you see in front of you, the degree to which we embed mental health into the fabric of our culture is the degree to which mental health will improve. What does that mean? That means if I can make American Express a safe place for people to have a mental illness, right? Reduce the stigma, make it a safe place for them to have a mental illness, and then have the resources available to them, that's a win for us, right? And that's what we do. And that's what we've been successful at doing. How did I start doing that? I created the brand Healthy Minds. Healthy Minds this is what the brand looks like in front of you. We use bright colors very judiciously, right? Our tagline is find your brighter side. Why? Because we know that if you catch mental health issues early, the earlier you get to treatment, the better the trajectory is. The better it is for the employee, the better it is for the employer, right? And so we want people to come in early. So I say, my words often are, let's cast stress before anxiety. Can we get sadness before depression? And that's the stuff we do on a very high level, in a nutshell, how we manage mental health on the corporate level. But again, that's not exactly what Matt wanted me to come here and talk about. So I'm going to tell you my story. Oh, before I go there, we are an award-winning program, and I only use this to tell you we've won a couple of American Psychological Association awards. I won Corporate Leader of the Year award. The reason I put that picture in front of you where it says Seeds of Hope, that was my Corporate Leader of the Year award, because I thought you might be interested in what it looks like to see me standing next to an NFL player. Someone my size, that's Brandon Marshall. And he won the same year I did. He won Trailblazer of the Year. That's incredible, right? So quite a different look. Okay, so this is where it started for me. This is me as a kid. I came from a very loving Italian family. And, one of the things that I will say about my loving Italian family is we were trained very early not to talk about feelings. We didn't believe that, right? And my mother had a saying, we don't believe in psychology, we believe in sockology. Does anybody know what that means? If you saw Moonstruck, Cher did it, right? Snap out of it, right? They'd hit you in the head and say, snap out of it. And we know that doesn't work very well, does it? But that was when I started to internalize not to express feelings. This was me in grade school. I'd like to draw your attention to that lovely handkerchief that has my name embroidered on it, right? Told you it was a loving family, right? What happened to me in grade school was that one of my classmates committed suicide. But this was during a time when we didn't have counselors come in. We didn't talk about it. And I certainly didn't go home and talk about this, right? I just sort of lived with it. It was the first wake I ever went to. I was terrified. Nothing happened after that. Business as usual. We almost forgot it happened. I went through a rock and roll phase in high school. That was the year that one of my good friends got into an automobile accident and died. Once again, I had no vehicle to express that. And I will say that what I later referred to as the cheese grater in my stomach started about there. What was the cheese grater? It meant that I had all these feelings, but I had no way of expressing them, no way of externalizing them. They just felt like a cheese grater in my stomach. But I went along, right? Nobody talked about any of that. This is a couple of years later, still in high school. One of my very best friends went into the hospital and never came out again. So you could see that for whatever reason, my life up until here was surrounded by loss. Never talked about it. The way I found out that my friend who was in the hospital died was that one of my friends came up next to me in a car and said, "Hey, guess what? Greg died last night." And I said, "Okay," and went on with my day. I didn't even have the vocabulary to know what to do, to talk about it. A couple of years later, I moved out of my family's house. I was living on my own and apparently bought those very shiny pants. But in addition to buying the shiny pants, I will tell you what happened next was AIDS came to my community. And a lot of people died. And there was a moment where I just shut that off. I had no body to talk to about it, no way to talk about it. And I'll tell you that cheese grater kept growing, right? Kept growing and getting bigger and more present. I didn't know what it was. I thought that's how people were. And so I did basically nothing, but I will tell you that at these periods of my life, I was kind of floundering. I dropped out of school, didn't know what I wanted to do, wasn't sure there was a future, right? So I floundered. That was me floundering in hairdressing school. I hated cutting hair. But that was my training, and apparently I won an award for that lovely holiday hairdo on that mannequin there. But it didn't last long, and I never even actually got a job in that field, right? Because it wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just didn't, I was floundering. I went through a goth stage. Those are combat boots, right? But still, the same thing. I was going through life really kind of, I would say rudderless, with no way of expressing or externalizing anything that I was feeling. Until I met this guy, and this guy is Alan Magid. Alan Magid, at that time, was a counselor in the Gestalt Institute in Manhattan. He's an amazing man. And so someone said to me, maybe you should go get some therapy and figure out some of these issues that you're going through, and I did. And I stayed with Alan for a long time. And it took Alan, I would say it was probably with him for about a year. And at one point, and Alan was a big guy, and he had a very booming voice, and one day he said to me, Charles, we're going to have to deal with that loss thing. And I said, oh, no, Alan, I don't talk about that. There's nothing there. We're not going to talk about it. But Alan was amazing and persistent, and he kept coming back, and we did talk about it. And that cheese grater started to go away, right? It started to change a little bit, and it started to feel better. And I hope you're sitting down because one day when I was going to my appointment at Alan's, I was walking through the streets of Manhattan, I got a phone call, my cell phone rang. What do you think happened? Alan was dead. Alan had died the night before. And I couldn't believe it, right? I almost couldn't believe it. I sat down on the curb and I couldn't function, and I cried. But that's why it's not a sad story, right? Because in the first time in my life, for the very first time, I had a feeling about loss, right? I had a feeling. I sat down and I wept. And what Alan did for me was he opened a door, right? And once that door was open, it couldn't be closed anymore. And so I found other people to work with, and I kept working on this issue. And, sometimes I will tell you that cheese grater still comes back, right? Stuff happens. But I learned how to live a good life. And I think if I'm going to tie it all together, what I do at American Express is provide those doors for people, right? When I really thought about what is it that I do, how did I get here, why do I do what I do, that's why, right? Because I want people to have doors. I don't want them to go decades like I did and have that feeling and no way of externalizing and no resources to do that. So that is my story. I am so honored to have been here. I appreciate you guys all listening, and thank you.